What's up everyone, it's a beautiful morning on Bristol Harbourside, and in this video I'm going to be sharing with you the most powerful techniques for getting rid of fear. But first, as an example, here's a clip of me completely paralysed with fear when trying to talk on camera only 2 years ago. Right. And the funny thing is, there was literally no danger to me there, was there? I'd literally just bought my camera, the same one that I'm recording on now, and I was trying to record these little test videos in my spare room. It wasn't live, I could stop the recording at any point. In fact, no one even had to see it. I was actually practicing being on camera by trying to answer these questions that my mum had sent me in a text message. Yeah, that's how I got started off. But the fear was still there. Just standing in front of the camera had me getting all hot and sweating, and I was scratching my neck and like tensing my jaw the whole time. I know, weird. Sometimes it doesn't matter how much we're really safe. Something is firing on in our brain saying danger, danger, and releasing a load of adrenaline. In this case, probably from the fear of public speaking. The fear probably developed in a time when we were in tribes, where upsetting the status quo by speaking out of line could have meant exile from the tribe, which could have been a death sentence. But these days, we respond with so much fear to many situations where we're in very little real danger at all. Even though I wasn't even really public speaking, my brain still seemed to think that I was and reacted accordingly. Now, maybe you still think that was an overreaction, and maybe you're right. But I'm someone who's dealt with a lot of fear in my life. For most of my 20s, I suffered from debilitating panic attacks. Admittedly, a few of them, the cause was obvious. Even though everyone else seemed to be doing just fine, I had obviously just partied too hard for too long for my psychology to handle. But other times, it would just come out of nowhere, whilst completely sober on a seemingly normal day. And when I say panic attack, I mean panic attacks. The word just doesn't do it justice, and anyone who hasn't had a panic attack like this simply can't understand the absolute palpable doom and dread that you go through. A small part of me would remember that I'm not in any danger, but the rest of me was sure this was it. This was the time I'm going to go crazy and there's no going back. So, what took me from being someone who was more or less paralyzed with fear, unable to talk on camera and suffered from regular panic attacks, to someone who's able to record a video outside in a public place without any fear of looking silly or stupid? What I'm going to share with you is broken down into 4 steps, 3 of which set the foundation, making it a lot easier to confront the things that scare us. But stay till the end, because the 4th is what takes it to the next level and has us being able to rise above the fear consistently. The first one is admittedly a bit basic, but sometimes a little challenging for some of us to put into practice. And that is to see if you need to cut down on caffeine or drugs or alcohol, which is a drug, and porn usage. Yes, all of these things can overstimulate us and put our dopamine system out of whack and lead to elevated levels of anxiety and overwhelm. Now, I'm not saying you have to end all the fun in your life along with all the coffee consumption. It's a case of experimenting and trying things out to see what works the best for you. Personally, at the moment, I get on pretty well with coffee. I can drink a fair few cups before bringing on the heart palpitations or the major jitters. But that could change over time, and other people have found out that it's affecting them in a really undesirable way and have found benefits by cutting it out altogether. And it's the same with all of these things. Sometimes you have to take a week or a month or even a few months off to really see how it affects your body and mind, so you can make an informed decision about how much to indulge, if at all. The second thing is habituation. Maybe you've seen this quote somewhere that says something like this: Do something that scares you every day. And that's because there's a lot of power in this. In my late teens and early 20s, I used to skate halfpipe at nearly every opportunity I could find. Not because I was trying to do something that scares me every day, but because I was compelled to. I was young and full of energy, although I still am now. But at the same time, the fear of trying new tricks never really went away, and the risks were real. Granted, there wasn't that much chance that you were going to break a load of bones, but it certainly hurt when you fell, and I fell a lot. And there was these times where I'd be standing at the top of the half pipe ready to drop in and go for a certain trick, and there was always this mental obstacle to overcome. But at some point, I had to just say screw it and just go for it. I never realized it, but at the time, all that skating primed me for some bigger risk-taking later on in my life. I was used to overcoming the little fears, and that made many of the bigger fears that little bit easier to overcome. And that's the key here, to start small. Maybe you feel like walking up to that person you fancy and asking them out is just too much for you to handle right now, but maybe saying hi to a checkout assistant and asking how their day has been going is relatively easy. And then what about sparking up a conversation with someone at the gym? And then what about complimenting a stranger on their style and gradually ramping up your courage to spark progressively more daring conversations until asking someone out isn't such a leap after all? The things you face up to on a regular basis don't have to be in line with a particular goal, although it is helpful if you've got certain aims around certain projects or your dating life or your business or whatever you're working on. It can be helpful to start small and take progressively more daring action in line with that. But don't wait until you have a particular goal. As long as you're moving out your comfort zone on a regular basis, you're on your way to the next level of what life has to offer. And I just want to jump in here real quick and say, if you're enjoying my content, and you want to feel more empowered to take daring action in your life, then why not come and chat to me on a free 30-minute call? Just go over to my Instagram, which is Alex_Shayla, and send me a message that says 30 minutes. Whether it's to help you do more of the things you've been thinking or dreaming of doing, or to simply take your personal or spiritual life to the next level, just pop over to my Instagram, Alex_Shayla, and send me the text 30 minutes, and we can schedule a time to talk very soon. So the third thing that helped me when it comes to doing activities that have fear surrounding them is to evaluate whether there really is any risk, and if there is, ask myself the question, am I prepared to take that risk? You see, a lot of us look at activities that have fear attached to them and just react to the emotions, but there's a place for logic and reason in all this. Let's look at the example of me trying new skating tricks. The risk is I could fall and hurt myself, but how badly, really? I mean, I felt so many times that I got used to how much it usually hurts, which usually involve smacking my hip on the coping. And although that was very painful, it never really did any long-term damage. There was a risk that I could twist my foot or something, or do some slightly more serious damage. And there was a very small risk that I could do some very serious damage. But then I also drove a car nearly every day. I mean, there's a risk of getting into a fatal accident every time we drive a car. But of course, most of us jump in and speed off down the road without even thinking about it. The point is, although I still felt the fear, I had decided that I was prepared to accept those risks. And so a lot of the time that helped me to feel the fear and do it anyway. Like, let's look at base jumping. It's one of the most dangerous sports in the world, with a fatality and injury rate 43 times higher than parachuting from a plane. So it's not something that I would personally be rushing to get into right now. But for some people, the experience and exhilaration is worth the risk. Now, I realize you have to look past the statistics and that most of these sports are as dangerous as you make them. I mean, I've been paragliding before, and I would definitely do a skydive if I had the opportunity. But the point is, when looking at any activity, you're either going to accept the risks or you aren't. And you can only take so much data into consideration and think about it for so long. So once you've considered the risk and decided that you accept it, then you just got to stop thinking about it and move through the fear and do it anyway. And this is really helpful when it comes to activities like this, like recording a video in a public place or asking someone out on a date. Yes, there's fear, but there's really very little risk. Well, maybe a risk that our ego will get dented and some emotional pain if we're identified with that ego, but really no more risk to our health and well-being than usual. And this is what makes the risks really easy to accept. And so once you've decided to accept the risk, you just got to stop thinking about it and do it anyway, right? But how do you do that if every time you go to do it, the fear emotion is triggered and your mind starts whirling and you can't stop thinking? Well, this is the fourth and most important thing to do. Once fear emotions have been triggered, they can trigger fearful thoughts, right? And then the fearful thoughts trigger more fear emotion, more adrenaline, more cortisol, the stress hormone, and then your heart rate increases. And then that triggers even more fearful thoughts, and it becomes this vicious cycle. But the key to breaking it is to step into the present moment by moving your attention from being completely consumed by the thoughts in your head onto sense perceptions, what you can see, hear, possibly smell, and the sensations in your body. Now, this takes a bit of practice at first because the thought stream can feel really powerful sometimes, especially in times of fear, like it wants to suck your attention back in. Because, it almost feels better being in the thoughts than it does being with your sense perceptions where the raw emotion is. But when you bring your attention to your senses, which includes the sensations that correspond with the fearful emotion, you start to dissolve the emotion. You start to become the space that contains it rather than being completely consumed by it. You step into awareness, aware of the emotion that's there, even if it doesn't feel nice. And I've had to do this with emotions that really don't feel nice. I've done this same thing with terrifying panic attacks. And when you're having a panic attack, this is the time when the emotion feels the most terrifying and horrible. And it's the most challenging time to keep that presence and stay with your senses instead of getting sucked back into the thought stream. In fact, sometimes for me to look at that emotion felt like staring into the eyes of a demon. But staring down the demon and not taking my eyes off it is what would eventually evaporate it into thin air. At first, it feels worse because you're allowing the emotion in, but allowing it in and accepting it is what has you move through it. And then once you move through it, you're ready to face bigger challenges than ever before. So if you liked this video, please give it a like, and of course, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you don't miss out on any new videos helping you with conscious personal growth.